Welcome to the Forward Together webinar series, brought to you by the School of Management at California Lutheran University. The series is designed to bring interesting topics and people to our global community of students, alumni, and leaders in business and government to empower, educate, and inspire. Forward Together features experts from industry with the purpose to spark thought, connect people, and stimulate engaging discussions. Please submit your questions in the chat. We will hold a Q&A immediately following the presentation. Today's host is Gerhard Apfenthaler, Dean of the School of Management.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our students, our alums, and community members to our Forward Together webinar. We have a very exciting program for you with a fascinating guest. For those of you who attend the Forward Together webinar series for the first time, let me just explain how we work these briefly. We start with a short interview section where I get to interview our guest for the webinar, and afterwards we will attend to your questions. I invite you all to submit your questions through the Q&A section on this webinar, and we'll take them as they come in. I know we also have had a number of questions that also already came in with the registrations, and I will do my best to integrate those questions in our chats that I'm going to have with our special guest, Chris Lytton, President and Chief Operating Officer of the Jim Henson Company. Good afternoon, Jim. Chris, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, hi, Dean Gerhard. Thank you. Thank you.
I guess that happens a lot, right? The confusion.
I only wish. I only wish.
It's a great pleasure to have you here, Chris. We are very honored to have somebody from a company that has been a major player in the entertainment industry for such a long time. And I want to say, why don't we start out with a little bit of history of the Jim Henson Company, where it came from, what it has brought to us as viewers, as the audience, and maybe where it's going also.
Great. Well, thank you, Dean Gerhard, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm a huge fan of Cal Lutheran, and I'm a fan of the program you're running, Dean, and so really it's an honor to be here. And I'd love to talk to you about this company because I'm so passionate about it, and it's touched the lives of so many people. The Jim Henson Company has been a name that is close to the heart and the hopes and dreams of so many, and it's been making television and making people smile for over 60 years. Obviously, most famous for Jim Henson creating the Muppets and the characters on Sesame Street, and the legacy just continues now with the adult children of Jim Henson, Lisa Henson, our CEO, Brian Henson, and the family that owns the company, the Henson family. And we continue to make wonderful television, wonderful movies, and our specialty and what we're most known for is family entertainment, of course. And we do make animation, but really where our super fans are some of our favorite people is in the fantasy world. So we love making fantasy television. We create worlds. We create those kind of the worlds that people dream about at night, and the places they'd like to go live if only they were real. So, but we're continuing strong. The business has changed, but we're busier than ever.
Yeah, it's definitely true what you said. You brought smiles, you brought entertainment to many of us. And I remember, I'm one of the ones who was born in the last century, if not last millennium, right? And so I grew up on shows like the Muppets and the Fraggles. And those are very warm and fuzzy memories that I still hold true. And you also had a big success this year, right, with one of your latest features.
Yeah, we're primarily a television company, but our goal is to still make a movie a year. And Lisa Henson produced Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio with her partners, and that movie won an Oscar for Best Animated Feature, which was a wonderful, wonderful acknowledgement. And you mentioned Fraggle Rock, Dean, which is near and dear to our heart. There's a little Fraggle back there. Fraggle Rock is now in its second season, the reboot of Fraggle Rock, called Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock. is in its second season on Apple TV Plus. And we're really excited about that. We just received an Emmy nomination for one of our holiday specials for Fraggle Rock just 2 weeks ago. So our fingers are crossed for the Emmys in December that we'll have another win.
Congratulations on the nomination. You mentioned that the company is still owned by the Henson family.
Yes.
Is that normal in the movie industry, in the entertainment industry, that there are still family-run businesses as opposed to publicly held companies?
Well, I think the ecosystem in the entertainment industry is scattered. They're very, very large, the biggest companies in the world, the Apples, the Netflixes, and the Googles, Amazon. Obviously, you hear these dominant names, and now those are even bigger companies than the Walt Disney Company and Warner Brothers and the kind of traditional studios. But really in the production company business, meaning the companies that develop content, produce content, and in some cases finance and distribute, smaller companies, there's often the small business component to them, but rarely are they second generation family businesses. We are definitely a rare company that has been able to survive and thrive, even after obviously, Jim Henson is no longer with us, and they've been running the company. The family's been running the company for decades successfully. Mm-hmm. That's pretty rare. But it is a business that we are at our core, a small business community. And we feed into these giant publicly traded companies, but the people who actually oftentimes make movies and television are small companies.
Mm-hmm. You said survive and thrive, and I guess also keep the spirit alive, right? Because it's still about bringing smiles to people, and it's still about healthy, sound family entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our brand, as I like to say, punches way above its weight. That we are a small company, but our brand really it's known all over the world, and it's generationally known. And our real mission here is we want to create successful commercial hit shows and create wonderful characters that will last. But we are very much stewards of a brand that represents something to so many people, and we take that very seriously. And we're very careful with the content that we make to ensure that it is consistent with the message of the brand. But we are a commercial company. We're not Sesame Street. We're not the Fred Rogers company of Mr. Rogers fame, who are have a very strong nonprofit component. We're a for-profit company, but we put our brand first. That's for certain.
Mm-hmm. And I understand you are at a very iconic location in Hollywood.
Yes, we're so lucky to sit here. I'm sitting here. This is, as I've told Dean Gerhardt, this is the nicest office I will ever have. So I enjoy coming to work every day, and glad that we're back in the office, post-COVID. But the Henson family owns this wonderful historic Charlie Chaplin lot, which is in the center of Hollywood, and they've owned it for over 20 years. And we have a sound stage. We have the biggest recording studio, or I'd say the most prestigious recording studio in Los Angeles, with the biggest artists here all the time. We run it 24/7. It's so busy. We shoot on our sound stage. We have beautiful offices. So it's a lot of fun to come to work and, to be reminded that Hollywood history, that those stages are where Chaplin, helped found the motion picture industry. And we're continuing that legacy, and keeps us humble, but also reminds us that we're in an ever-changing business, and we need to be nimble, and we need to change with it. Nothing stays the same in entertainment.
But I'm getting goosebumps when you talk about Charlie Chaplin and how it all started. And I bet it looked very different 100 years ago, right?
Well, we have in our lobby, we have some incredible pictures, which anytime you go to any city and you see the pictures in 1900 or 1910 or 20, it's always amazing to see the orange groves or the lack of development. But what's interesting here is in this particular location, Hollywood, of course it looked very different, but it was already very busy. There's there's already traffic on La Brea, let's put it that way. And the stages were very busy, and he owned such a huge portion of Hollywood, and over the years, it's sad to see it disappear. So we are stewards of this, again, another legacy here in this real estate.
Yeah, and I understand apart from the TV shows and the movies and also the recording studio on the lot, there's another element also to the Jim Henson Company. There's the the puppet creature production.
Yes, and creature, puppets are at the heart of what we do. Puppets are our birthright, as we say. And there's everyone loves Kermit the Frog, everyone loves Big Bird, and so obviously for us, making the puppets, training puppeteers, working with puppeteers who are some of the most talented people in our business is just the foundation of our success. And we still run our Jim Henson Creature Shops, which are businesses that we run, that we actually create, we design, we build puppets and creatures, both for our own shows. We even still do all the Sesame Street puppets for Sesame Street. So we have a small workshop in New York, and we work very closely with Sesame Street every day in their 50+ season of television. And we continue to make creatures and characters for other projects, and we've just one of the really exciting ones we just did was Five Nights at Freddy, which was a big hit movie that opened a few weeks ago and is based on a very successful game IP. And we were lucky enough to partner with Blumhouse, the production company, and the creator of the IP and the games to build these, which are actually iconic characters just for a new generation. And we're so happy with the success and happy for the Universal and Peacock with the success of these movies. It's a big deal. And it still shows us that there's life in going to the movies. We just have to be original, and we have to keep innovating. And whenever people say, well, how are things going? I say, well, Barbie did just fine, which is an understatement, of course. It was a big hit. So we're always trying to reimagine things. You can take things from 50 years ago and reimagine them today, just like Barbie or other IP.
Right, yeah. I want to get to your personal career also, but before I do that, I was just wondering, how does one become a puppeteer or somebody who works in the creature shop? What is a career path for creative people like that?
Well, that's a very bespoke, type of business, and it is definitely the people who go into it. They have such a deep passion and reverence for the craft that they are almost called to it. But ultimately, being a puppeteer it is so incredibly difficult to do it well. It requires an enormous amount of training. We train puppeteers. Brian Henson, our chairman, who's one of the most famous puppeteers of them all and a film director, we train people to continue in that craft, because it's something that there's a way to make a living, and it's a wonderful way for those creative actors to make a living, whether it's that Jim Henson Company, Disney, Sesame Street. These are the big companies that work with puppeteers. And as far as our workshops, these are the same craftspeople who would work in really creating any kind of creature effect or in the special effects business. So it draws from that same group of people who want to be in the kind of the physical craft side of the entertainment business.
Mm-hmm. Understood. I normally reserve the questions for the later part of our webinar, but there was just one coming in about Five Nights at Freddy's. The question is, was that actually a scary experience, or was it a fun experience for the people involved?
That's a great question. I think it was just pure fun. I think they absolutely loved what they were doing. The crew was so passionate, the creators, the director, the creator and owner of the IP, there's so much passion there that they had a blast shooting the movie, and hopefully there'll be more of them.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk a little bit about yourself, Chris. What brought you into the entertainment industry? What was your career path? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I'm really very blessed and lucky to sit where I'm sitting in this chair today. I think the entertainment business, you never know. It's not a linear path. It's definitely there's opportunities as they come before you, and you really have to seize them and then make the most of them. But for me, I'm a failed child actor, so I always wanted to be in front of the camera and be in the industry. And growing up here in Los Angeles, I think you're so drawn to the engine room of commerce here that is the media business in general. I say perhaps if we'd grown up in Washington, D.C., we'd want to be in politics. But here, I think we all want to be in entertainment if we can. And so I'm a lawyer by background, so came up through that side of the business, as many people do. Obviously, I'm not on the creative side of the industry. So I often advise people and say, you want to be a specialist in this business, but at the same time, be a jack of all trades, which is really hard to say, well, how am I supposed to do both? Well, I think whether you're a finance person, which is probably the most popular path to the kind of corporate side of our business today, but back when I'm a little bit older too. So back when I was coming up, being a lawyer was a path going through the business affairs route and the finance route. So that's my background, is coming through production financing, business affairs. And I've worked for a series of wonderful production companies over the years, Morgan Creek Productions, Beacon Pictures, and others. And all of them, we're all in the same business, but doing things differently and a different approach or a different focus. So I think you take all those collective experiences and you keep moving. As we were talking, Dean, earlier, this is a business that allows you to, I don't want to say play musical chairs, but there's no expectation that you're going to sit at one job here for 25 years. It's okay to move around. In fact, people really benefit from the different experiences and bringing all that collective knowledge. Well, here's how we did things at this other company, or people come out of Netflix or Amazon or these very large companies. There's a lot of opportunity to move around in this business and gain experience. So that's something. I don't know if that's unique to this business, because I've really only worked in this industry, but I appreciate that, because you never feel like the door is closed to tomorrow.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's certainly a great way for individuals to learn about the industry from different aspects and in different organizational cultures. But also it's a great way to transfer knowledge between companies, yes. Right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about what is in the title of our webinar today, right? So we talk a little bit about disruption. And I guess one of the biggest changes that the entertainment industry went through in the last few years is the emergence of streaming. How has the streaming business changed the life of a company such as the Jim Henson Company?
Well, it's completely changed our business, and on one level, and on another level changed nothing at all, in the sense that we're still develop content. We are storytellers. We develop pitches, create our own ideas, and then curate them and nurture them like children, and eventually go and try and sell them to a network or a movie studio. And in the old days, perhaps there were broadcast networks, or they were cable networks, when HBO became, the juggernaut that it was. And now the streaming platforms are really an extension of that. So to a certain extent, business operates in the same way. How we consume content has obviously changed completely for all of us. And I think that presents a challenge for the future, as production companies and we call ourselves a mini studio or a big production company, because we have to capture the audience, and that has become more challenging. The discoverability of content on all these streaming platforms is a challenge. How do you know if something's coming out? And how do you find it, and how do you fall in love with it? So for us, we're definitely focused on, we are agnostic. We sell to all the streamers. We have shows on Disney Plus, Apple, Netflix, and we're thrilled to have all those partners, and they all have a slightly different approach to their content. But for us, we need to capture an audience. We need to capture them early. We need to retrain, or I should say train, this younger generation. I have children, and we all know they're on these all day long, and they are consuming content in short form. They're watching YouTube, especially younger kids. So the challenge for us is, how do we keep the audience both coming to the watching scripted television, and of course going to the movie theaters. And I think movies like Five Nights at Freddy and Barbie show you that the movie business is still very robust. It's just perhaps outside of the big tentpole Marvel movies, we really have to be even more original and nimble than we've ever been.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier too, right? That storytelling will probably never die. People long for stories, and the emergence of the streaming giants probably has created a lot of opportunities as well, along with the challenges that you have. One thing that I feel is when you look at streaming companies like Netflix or Apple, they are not just distributors of content, right? They are also more and more producers, and they're studios. So there is a new type of concentration in the industry that reminds me a little bit of the early stages of the movie industry, where studios had actors under contract and they controlled pretty much the whole value chain before it became more fragmented. Do you share that view, or am I totally wrong on?
No, I think that observation is totally correct. I think there are very large. The buyers have always been concentrated in the sense of there were only ever so many companies that could put programming to an audience. But there was a period of time where there were many mini studios. And of course, Lionsgate came to prominence in that era and succeeded and stayed, and has grown and become a bona fide major studio. But many, they're the gravestones of many companies in the 2000s, let's just say, that were on their way to becoming larger companies, or perhaps onto that Lionsgate path, and they didn't make it because ultimately the capital required to stay at the table, to release movies, to own cable stations, to be able to program a network. It's a very, as you say, they own the whole value chain. So it's very hard to compete. For us, that's not an issue because we're a production company. We just want more buyers to take our content. But it is definitely, the world has changed, and you have very powerful companies. Luckily, those very large streaming companies, tech companies, they're buying a lot. So they've kept the industry they've been very healthy for the industry. As we've heard this phrase, peak TV. If it's true, there were 600 scripted television shows, let's say last year. We know it's slowed down significantly. That was a high watermark. That means there were more people working in our business really than in the past. We'll see what happens with streamers focusing on profitability and not subscribers. And obviously we had the Netflix correction of their stock, but now they seem to be stronger than ever. So I'm still very optimistic that more companies will find their lane, and we'll see a lot of independent companies. And we're also really talking about the US. There are many, mini majors in Europe that we deal with directly, with the companies like Sky in the UK, or others in, in Studio Canal, and these companies that can compete in different territories.
Mm-hmm. So when you pitch a new TV show or a movie, how do you make the decision of who to pitch to first? How do you make the determination whether Netflix or Apple or Amazon or a broadcast network is the right partner for you?
Well, that is really the remit of the creative team. And that's where production companies like ours, you have to have wonderful executives who have a deep knowledge of the industry and also have great personal relationships. It still has that very personal touch in the production side. Selling shows is still a one-to-one business. You're sitting across the table from somebody who can say yes and green light a show, but they have to have confidence in you that you're going to deliver on the promise that's on the page. Because ultimately what they're reading has to be translated to the big screen or the small screen, and it better look like what you pitched in the room. So for us, again, we have a wonderful executive team, and we have our owners, the Hensons, who have incredible relationships with major executives. But it's horses for courses. You need to know your buyer. You need to know you're developing a certain kind of show for Netflix, because we know that's what they're looking for, either through discussions with them or through industry research. But I think for people who are out there trying to get in the business, say, well, how would I ever pitch a network? You definitely want to pitch them what they're looking for. And so if we're pitching a show to PBS Kids, where we release a lot of our children's programming, obviously we know that's a certain kind of entertainment that might be a bit different than Nickelodeon. Or if we're going to Netflix, you may be pitching to a group within Netflix that's either the animated television or animated features or scripted television. So they're all different. There's different executives who receive your pitch or hear your pitch, who have specialties at all these different networks. But it is a challenge. It's a day-to-day, their businesses are changing fast, and those businesses, I think was it Zuckerberg who said, move fast and break things. They all move fast. They move faster than we can move in terms of content development takes time. So you really have to keep your finger on the pulse of what they need and not be pitching them what they needed last year.
Right. So fast is an important cue also. So the pace of development has also changed, I assume. Especially with the consumer behavior changing, right? That we all binge shows these days, and we don't want to wait another week for the next episode to come out. We want it all now, and episodes have become shorter, but then we have more episodes. Is that a correct observation?
I would say a big, and of course you saw this during the WGA strike and the SAG strike, which we're so glad that's resolved, and it seems that everybody walked away from the table a little bit happy and a little bit upset, which is it's a sign of a good labor negotiation. So it seems like there's a healthy conclusion. But one of the big challenges, especially with writers, is that often these streaming orders, a Netflix show, they may order 6 episodes, but it still takes roughly the same amount of time to develop and write and produce. So I do think the order patterns are changing. Length of programming is changing. It's funny, we're often dealing with in whether it's in contracts or conversation, it was the delineation between what was television and what was film was really clear, 10, 12 years ago. Now it's all just programming, content, and the length doesn't necessarily mean that something is television versus film. It used to be if it was 2 hours, it's probably a movie. And if it was 30 minutes, it was probably a TV episodic show. But now there's a lot in between, specials and just looking at things differently, chapters.
Right. I'm glad you brought up this strike. What I understand about the strike is that the contract negotiations were also a little bit about artificial intelligence and the threat that might present to the industry, and definitely that could be a source of disruption of the industry as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? How you see the future of AI in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, it became a huge. It appears to have been a huge issue, especially in the SAG strike in those last few weeks after the WGA had settled. But I think that this has always been a business that thrives on innovation, and we're an innovative company. We're a tech company at our core because we produce animation with virtual production, virtual puppetry technology that we were doing before virtual production really had a name. And I think that this industry will react so well to technology and will always use it to its best effect. It may impact. I do understand the concerns of writers that they don't want large language or whatever it's, learning models of AI binging on their scripts or from actors' performances. If you have a certain marquee way of doing things, I mean, when The Rock does something on screen, we recognize it's him because he has a certain way of certain screen presence. And so obviously there's a concern that we don't want AI to generate a character that is trading off of that likeness or the images or the words. But you can't stop technology, and we've always done well in this business. And when we tried to stop the DVDs, or we tried to stop streaming, or the VHS tape was going to ruin everything, it's not true. These things all ultimately are creative to the value of this industry because it opens doors of opportunity. And who knew that we'd all be watching the way we would interact with streaming? I mean, that's changed everything, and we were all the industry was afraid of that at one point, and now it's become the main financier of new content. So I think the technology will evolve, but I'm glad that they are putting people first, because we are a business that runs on people, writers, actors, directors, the incredible crews that show up at 4 a.m. in the freezing cold and build sets and set up lights. It's a tough industry to replace with AI.
Mm-hmm. I need to make sure that we're also getting to the questions that people are submitting in the Q&A section, but I also want to get to especially one question that came in with the RSVPs, which was a little bit about international affairs, international politics. We have markets now where the movie industry is booming, right? I'm thinking of China in particular, which has become such an important market for Hollywood. Are these political considerations important in the creative process, or maybe in the post-production process, where you might have to have different cuts, or you avoid different themes for certain markets? To what extent does that influence what you do at Jim Henson?
Yeah, I would say it's not a huge concern in our part of the industry. We're not making Maverick and dealing with issues regarding China, or we've all heard these stories, or where things have to be censored in certain places in the Middle East, where our programming is pretty family friendly across the board, or it's fantasy, so it doesn't really get into the contemporary themes of politics as often. But it's certainly a concern because we rely on the international world. We sell internationally. We run our own distribution. We have a great sales team. We go to all the markets, whether it's the various markets that are in Cannes or Berlin or here in the US. And you're always there. You're not there to have fun. You're there to sell a piece of content you've made to different kinds of broadcasters or platforms in various countries. So if those countries are having either economic issues or they are restricting US content, it's a hit to our industry. China is the greatest example. You have obviously the biggest market in the world that in many ways is not open to US content. There's very, very limited movies that can get in there and limited television shows that can get on television there. So we do sell obviously into China when we want to be there, of course, and we want them to enjoy our kids' programming. But world affairs can have a big impact, and we've all seen what's happened with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia, that territory was very hard to sell to. There are political issues, and there are also financial issues. So those things do impact the entertainment business in a big way. It also impacts where we go to shoot, because you're very risk averse. There's insurance issues, there's bond issues. And it's very hard to go to countries where there's instability. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. And actors don't want to go there. So it's you have to be really cognizant of where you're putting a crew of 200 people for their safety and their well-being. And are you going to get the best product?
Right. So I want to get to the questions, and we have a question here from Catherine, who wants to know a little bit more about how movies or TV shows are financed. She also starts with a compliment, saying that you still produce content that can truly be called art. How hard is it to get such pieces of art financed? Is it happening through private investments, through pre-sales? Sales to distributors? Can you shed a little bit of a light on the financial aspects of production?
The answer is yes, all of the above.
All of these.
And was that Kathleen? Is that
Catherine?
Okay, well, thank you, Catherine. That's clearly our business. And yes, here at the Jim Henson Company, we operate in television. Is a little bit different than our film side. In the film side, we still run on that independent film model of going out, trying to make pre-sales, make enough pre-sales that allows you to get a production loan from a bank and use that loan to finance the movie and deliver it, and then collect on all those contracts that you made. And then if you didn't pre-sell enough, then you put in your own equity, which we do as a company. We will work with partners. There's a lot there, as I'm sure you have seen, there's a lot of private equity, both institutional private equity and just high net worth investors who've always been around our business and continue to invest. People like investing in projects. If people fall in love with a project, they'll still come on board and be your partner. So we do all of that. Definitely bank financing has the debt markets, I think across all debt markets, they've tightened, cost of capital's up. So we are very much looking for other opportunities and other ways to finance. Of course, tax rebates are a huge component of what we do, which is why so many productions go to Canada, Atlanta, New York, We've just been in Australia with a movie that generates enormous rebates. Very successfully made a movie in Germany that had some enormous rebates. So we are often looking for the most tax efficient territory that will give us the most money back for bringing the production dollars there.
Sounds like a very complex and fragile endeavor.
It can be fragile and it's complex, a lot of pieces you're putting together, but people, I often say that I work with really smart people, and I think our industry is full of very smart people who are creative, never take no for an answer. And you tell them a problem, they'll come at it with 5 solutions. They may be bad ideas, but they always try and come up with a solution.
We have a couple of questions that are speaking to a similar issue, a question from Jason and a question from Terry. Streaming companies are a lot not only about content, but also about data and using algorithms to optimize their platform performance. So the first part of the question from Jason is, to what extent do streaming networks share data with you, demographic data, behavioral data, so that you can optimize your future projects, for instance?
Yeah, Jason, I'd like to put you in the room with some of the streamers and explain to them the importance of that, because they really don't share data with other companies. And that, of course, was again, back to the strike, was a big issue with actors and writers saying, we have no idea if this show is a hit show. I mean, we know Stranger Things is successful, and we know Wednesday or Ted Lasso is successful, but we don't know how successful. And trying to figure out how those guilds, those unions would get a piece of that, or an uptick in their residuals as a result of success, was a big part of that negotiation. For us as producers and production companies, of course, we don't have that leverage. And they, they're big data companies, so they really don't share much that's valuable. They will give you insight into, here's what we're looking for, here's what's working on the network. So we want things more along these lines. But in terms of total total viewership, total minutes, it's very opaque, which is frustrating, because we would, of course, tailor what it is we're making if we had that information. But hey, they're the ones who built these incredible companies with their data, and it's their data. So I say, if they don't want to share it, that's up to them, right? I mean, these are private industries.
And Terry brings up in the Q&A a concern about that, right? So couldn't streaming companies also design algorithms that lowers access to your particular shows?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about it that way. I think, Terry, in the end, there's an executive there who's greenlit a show, and whether it's one of our shows or someone else's, they put X number of millions of dollars on the line. That executive they want that to be a success. It's possible, and we've heard, and there is a lot of concern that shows that maybe they aren't correctly positioned in an algorithm, can be unfairly maybe damaged, and they don't get their shot on goal to be successful. But again, the streamer's just trying to acquire customers and maximize revenue per user. They're incentivized, I think, to make sure every show is a success if they can. But it is a problem for us, because we really can't control that outcome. So it can be frustrating, because we think we've made something that's a hit, and we don't see that performance kind of reflected back to us. I'm saying about streamers. We still make things for network television and for PBS, and those things. That's a different experience.
So it looks like we have a number of people on the webinar who are real experts in the industry with very detailed questions. We have an anonymous question about platforms such as Pluto, Freevee, and Tubi. The question is if they can be a profitable way to go for independent, low-budget producers with good genre features. Do you have any insight on that?
Yes, and that is not a path we've taken, but I do know that is becoming more popular, because those budgets are a bit lower than we can really produce at. That's not our wheelhouse. But yes, I have heard that the AVOD services are the Rokus of the world. We are able to make deals with them, and they are financing. And I think those numbers will just go up and up. there's no question that advertising supported television, which has been working for, I don't know, 80 years, is now going to be the future as Netflix moves to an advertising tier. And these AVOD channels with, like, you named the top ones, the Plutos and the Tubies and the Rokus, they are all, they're the future in many ways because they're growing, and fast channels and AVOD channels, we distribute on all of them. We think that those are going, we're at an inflection point where their growth is going to hockey stick. It's just a question of whether they will be a replacement revenue-wise for what were traditional license fees. We haven't seen that yet, honestly. They're not generating the same revenue you would get from a traditional license fee, and it's taking much, much longer to receive that money. But I think that these platforms will survive and be very much the conversation 5-10 years from now, including fast channels.
To be seen, right? So with another very specific question, I'm not surprised that it's very specific. It comes from Primo, who's not only a double alum of Cal Lutheran, but he also was an executive VP at NBC Universal in studio operations. And so he asks about news preschool series at MIP Junior and MIPCOM 2023. He asks about what the response was to your 3 new preschool series.
Well, Primo, you're really inside the tent, so you should be on camera with us. But thank you for bringing that up. We were so proud. You know, during this labor disruption, a lot of companies felt very paralyzed because you couldn't really develop content. Writers couldn't work. Obviously, actors couldn't work. And so we endeavored to invest in our own content. So we came up with and developed 3 incredible shows developed by our kind of on-the-lot producers and our head of television, and they are absolutely adorable. The marketplace in MIPCOM loved them, so I don't know if you were there and you got to see them, but we've developed a traditional kids puppet show and 2 shows using our patented animation technology. That's this digital puppetry technology that we use, and it has this great look because it's real-time performance of animated characters. And the market response was incredible. They're hungry for content. It always takes time after a market to actually make deals, make sales, and then make the show. But what we found was kind of post-COVID, there was a lot of animation because people leaned into animation. And so there was maybe there was a bit of a oversupply in the market. Right now, it was a really good time. And there's definitely an appetite for new shows in the market, especially because these independent distributors in all of the world, but particularly, outside of the US, they're hungry because Netflix, Amazon, Disney, all the big companies take so much of the content off the table that they're dependent on suppliers like the Jim Henson Company to provide them a steady flow of product.
I can't believe that we're actually also already very close to the end of our webinar. We try to keep them to 45 minutes. As they say, time flies when you're having fun, and I believe we could continue for hours and hours. But let me just ask you, since we have a number of students also on the webinar, what would your recommendation be for people, whether they are creatives or whether they come more from the business side of things? What is the best way to get a foot in the door in the movie business and TV business?
Well, obviously, I think it depends on what direction. If you're in the creative direction or the business direction, I would say more. I'm on the business side, so I think the best thing to do is to you take that first job, whatever it is. You don't need to worry about, well, this isn't exactly what I want. You just want to get your foot in the door, as you just said, Dean, in the industry. Because there's so much, the knowledge that you'll gain, it's drinking from a fire hose in those early years, and you don't really know what you want necessarily, where you want to be. Just like if you said, when I was a lawyer, I thought I wanted to be an oil and gas lawyer. Well, that's not what I actually ended up wanting to do. But, you think, so just being really open and flexible to just pursue all of those opportunities. Networking is key in this business. And I think developing those relationships at your peer group, I always encourage people, try and go to the biggest company you can, because it's those friends that you'll make who are your age coming up with you in the ranks. when that diaspora spreads out, because people do change jobs a lot, that's when you're really lucky. When you're then 40 years old, you say, oh, well, my friend Dean Gerhardt's running this studio over here. I can get him on the phone. That's the fun part, but that takes time, and you have to water those seeds and let them grow. And I think on the creative side of the business, it is the Wild West. You can do so much with a camera and an iPhone and your digital world and your social media presence, that influencers and creators have more opportunity than ever to get discovered, and to then have that chance to say, well, this person's so great on Instagram, let's have them direct an episode of this television show. So I think doing what you can that's right in front of you, but getting up every day, don't stop. You have to keep leaning in. You have to keep swimming and keep pressing, because the breaks happen, and it's about, when that break happens, immediately seizing it, whether it's a job offer or a lunch or a coffee with someone. Those things really can result in getting into the career you want.
So get up, do the work, don't give up, and don't forget to have fun and passion, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Chris. This was amazing. Time really flew by today. I apologize to everybody whose question we couldn't take today. We will collect the questions, and if it looks like there is something that we might be able to answer and you might be able to help us to answer, we'll try to do that after the webinar. We'll also make the webinar accessible through our YouTube channel. See, we're also distributing content very, very soon. And I thank everybody for being on the webinar today, particularly to you, Chris. I appreciate that you took the time to speak with me today and to take the questions from our audience. Thank you very much. I would also like to invite everybody to join us for any of our upcoming events. Before the end of the year, there's not too much going on, but we do have just in the week after Thanksgiving, an event in our Tech Talk series on AI strategies from corporate technology leaders. And then we have our annual Sports Management Sustainable Development Goals competition in December, which is an event on campus, a lot of fun, and a lot of great work to be seen from our students. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chris, and see you next time.
We thank you for participating in today's Forward Together webinar series, brought to you by the School of Management at California Lutheran University. The School of Management offers a broad range of programs and community services. Whether you're looking to upgrade your career, locate current economic data from our Center for Economic Research and Forecasting, or a place to start and grow your business at Hub 101, our community startup space, we invite you to visit us at clu.edu/SOM and join the community as we move forward together.